everyone. Thanks for joining in this call today. I know no one wants to take up one more webinar, and we never thought that we would do another webinar around employee engagement space. But when we looked around and the topics which were covered, what we found was most of the webinars were around how to engage your employees, how to manage their remote working, what kind of tools to be used around that space. And as we started discussing when Dr. Varsha and I got talking, we realized that one area which was missed out is a very basic area of employee psychology. That's the building block from where everything gets started around, building your policies and all. And as we looked around, is there any materials in that space in the current context? We didn't see too much around that, and that's where we thought that okay, let's do a small webinar. And Dr. Varsha, who's a PhD in psychology, she has close to 10 years of experience in developing personality and workplace behavior assessments, and she has created organizational frameworks and initiatives for OD practices. And her areas of interest are behavior modification, learning and application of psychology at corporates. She has authored white papers and articles and research papers in international journals. And I think she's the right person to talk to us about this topic. Now, we don't want it to be a lengthy thing, just about 20 minutes session presentation, and then we'll open up for question and answers. But in the meantime, you can keep the questions coming in. Post the 20 minutes or so, we will take up the questions. Okay, Dr. Varsha, over to you, please.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Partha, for the introduction. Welcome to this webinar. And like Partha said, we would want to keep it as interactive as possible. And we will be discussing about the psychological impact that COVID has on us today. In any crisis, psychologists tell you to socialize and not isolate yourself. But here, that really seems to be an issue and probably the reason why we are all too stressed out. So to begin on a positive note, let's be sure that we will definitely get through this. And we're certainly not alone, and we're all in this together. Remember, every time you go for a vaccine, those are the number of times that human beings have been through pandemic and have survived, right? So what are today's stressors really? I don't want to get into explaining what is stress and what is the effect of it and the impact of it, because we're all too familiar with it and we're quite acquainted with stress. So today's stress really looks like, apart from, too many webinars to attend, and the Zoom fatigue, which is real now. And also the stress to be mindful, right? We've heard this a lot, be there. As in, do your thing, stay calm, don't get stressed. But really, what is today's stress? If reports are to be believed, unemployment is to hit 30%. Market is in free fall. We have our concerns about our economic safety and security, and also our immunity towards this pandemic. So the underlying theme there is the uncertainty, not knowing answers to how the world will look like tomorrow, not knowing whether I'm going to have a job or not. Am I performing well enough? Am I doing my best? Am I being watched? Now, these are the kind of uncertainties that we are dappling with on an everyday basis. Before we get into how we are going to cope with uncertainty, let's look at Maslow's hierarchy for a bit. Now, if you look at this, we are all good at this level. The physiological needs, we're really good. Our food and shelter is taken care of. What's really our concern as of now is our safety needs. Safety in terms of our economic safety. Do we have the financial net to fall back on if I lose a job tomorrow? And do my loved ones and do I have the immunity towards this pandemic? Will I come out safe after all of this is over? And when it comes to our belonging needs, we're really seeing a shift. Today, all my near and dear ones, my colleagues, my peers, my friends, everybody is virtual. Yeah. So I do not have contact. There are no gestures. There are no non-verbal cues that will tell me that I belong, right? That I'm being loved. But it's very important for human beings to feel this because we are also social beings. So, what does this mean to us? If our needs at these levels, at safety and belonging, is not satisfied, well, the theory says that we will not be able to move up the hierarchy. So, in other words, I may not be performing to my optimum best, and I may not be feeling a great sense of self worth right now. So, when all of this is happening, what are the kind of emotions that is coming up for me or my colleagues or my peers? There is a lot of research done in this area, and the emotions that are predominant during periods of uncertainty is anger and anxiety. Now, both of these being negative emotions, they lead to unproductive behavior, diminished reasoning, biases and prejudices, more so at the workplace. Right now, why is it that what is a stressor for you need not be a stressor for me, and why is it that team members behave differently and react to this stress differently, right? Not all of them are uniformly approaching this situation of uncertainty. Not everybody is looking at lockdown and periods of work from home in the same way, right? Why is that? Why is there such a difference? It is because each person perceives the stress in a certain way. Now, if I look at stress as something that is threatening and it's going to last for a very long time, and if I feel that I do not have control over the situation, then this would be very overwhelming for me compared to the other person, right? And another important factor that predisposes us to stress is a cumulative effect. If I've been through stress all my life, I've had a bad childhood, I've been emotionally deprived, I've gone through a loss of job, poverty, maybe even a divorce, then a new stressor will be extremely debilitating and overwhelming for me, and it would make me extremely vulnerable, right? Compared to a person who hasn't been through all of this. So what do we really do? Obviously, we need to cope. But just before we get into the coping strategies, let's look at what are the kind of stressors that already exist. Having said that, there is a cumulative effect. It could be that your team member is already going through some sort of a low phase. It could be stemming from feeling unproductive. It can be stemming from feeling that I'm not qualified enough to do my job. There can be questions around it, and there could be a lot of emotional baggage someone is carrying. Someone may be ill at home. Yeah, so there are a lot of other stressors that are present in our life added to the uncertainty, and this definitely, if we are not being watchful enough, if we are not getting into coping strategies effectively, it would definitely affect us at both the physical and mental levels and harm our well-being. So like I've put up on this slide, you can see that it would affect our levels of energy. You would have disturbed sleep, could cause excessive worry, irritability, poor concentration, and more. So do we really then have to make a conscious effort to beat this stress, right? Yes, we need to do that. But at the same time, I would want you to know that our body and mind already has started putting up defenses in place the minute it senses a stressor. Right. So this happens at 3 interactional levels. At the biological level, where the body is building up the immunity system and our body is ready to fight. At the psychological and interpersonal level, we are really looking at, learning new coping mechanisms, new coping strategies, and we are seeking support and probably even love from our near and dear ones, our family and friends. At the socio-cultural level, we are looking at how we can fall back on our communities, our religious organizations, our government bodies for support. Right? This apart, we are also dealing with stress, or we know how to deal with stress in two different ways. One is a task oriented response, where I focus on the task at hand, understand what the problem is, try to see what is the crux of the issue, try to find solutions and alternatives to it, and really focus on the task, like the term says. If I'm adopting a defense oriented mechanism, then I would probably be in denial. You would have read lots of people saying that this lockdown is unnecessary, it may not be such a great pandemic after all, and all of that. Plus, I would probably get into repetitive talking, crying, mourning. While this seems to be not a great way to deal with stress, it's a great tool to do a damage repair of our psychological impairment that's happened. Now, these are things that are happening at an unconscious level, and this is something that our body and our minds are doing automatically. Now, to deal with uncertainty, a conscious effort needs to be made, and that can be made in a specific way. Now, evidence says that feeling in control of a situation is the best coping strategy during uncertain times, right? So, keeping that in mind, I've put up some coping strategies at both the personal and professional level. At the professional level, or the professional front, if you're a manager, guard against micromanagement. While your own need to feel in control and be in control might come up, I would suggest you guard against it. Instead, adopt a style of showing support to your team members and removing roadblocks. This would go a long way in creating trust. If you're an employee and your manager is doing micromanagement, then I would say, first, try to understand what he or she wants. Keep your manager in the loop at all times. Probably even have agreements beforehand, and then do not fight it. Yeah. So when you do all of this, it creates an environment of of trust for both of you, and helps you beat the stress. Right. Organizations can incorporate more autonomy and fluidity into every role. While this might seem a little, idealistic or impractical, a healthcare company has done just that. They rotated the job tasks assigned to employees. So 1 week, for example, I'm dealing with a benefits issue, and the next week I'm helping solve problems in another department. This led to an increase in employee retention, reduced the number of problems that they had, and it also made the employees feel a greater sense of well-being, and they also felt that they were doing meaningful work. So I would suggest you could probably try this out as an experiment and see if that works for you. At the personal level, when it comes to being and feeling in control, it's very important, because today my boundaries are blurred between my work life and my personal life. I do not know what time I'm working, what time I'm, being myself. So there's a lot of overlap there. One of the strategies is for you to time box your day. Have specific time slots for the work, the chores, or whatever that you want to do. Have a me time. I know staying at home, being around lots of people, it's possible that you've never found time for yourself, and probably could be a reason for the stress to increase. So find some me time there. So start a day and end the day at the same given time if possible. Maybe have agreements with your manager and your team members to say that, a particular time at night will be the last call that you will be taking. And have a specific place where you work from, so that at the end of the day you can actually go home. And all of this will make you feel a lot more in control and less at the mercy of the others. As important as being in control is, so it's social support. Research evidence goes back to the 1970s and is consistently still showing that having friends and family and having loved ones care for you goes a long way in building your physical and mental well-being. So at the workplace, it's important to be human, to be empathetic, and a transactional workplace can be really destructive. So I would suggest you do simple things like greet your team, probably have some activities that you can do together, non-professional, like something like an exercise regime that your team has a common goal to work towards. And, generally bring in a sense of positivity and care and empathy, and do check-ins on a regular basis. So these things will help you build a level of trust with your team members and also make it more friendly and less stressful for you. At the personal level, it goes without saying, interact with your friends and family and your loved ones who make you feel good to help ride out this stressful time. Also, get into some sort of social or community service. Research says that altruistic behavior triggers happy hormones in your body, and it definitely reduces stress. Caring for one another. What's really something that I'd like to address is the fear or the question that is looming on all of our heads right now. What if I lose my job tomorrow? Right? I draw a sense of identity from there. The kind of job that I have, the money that I earn really adds to my identity and my self-esteem. Now, if I stop being productive, then what? So where do I draw the energy from? So I think this is a good time for all of us to explore other dimensions of self, understand what kind of a person I am. Am I a good painter? Am I a good artist? Am I a good parent? And this is also a great time to learn and hone your secondary and tertiary skills so that you will be well prepared when it's time, right? And University of Columbia at New York conducted this research recently. The participants had to exercise for 35 minutes for 3 months, right? And it was seen that at the end of even 1 month of inactivity, the impact still remained. And the impact was less stress, less anger, less anxiety, more sense of well-being, and these people also became more jovial. So exercising is again a great tool to beat the stress. Apart from this, there are certain steps that you can take. Dealing with stress is like spending money. Okay, so you can spend your money, but at the same time, you notice that your account balance will come down. So you need to keep replenishing your account with money. So when it is stress, how do we replenish this? Laughter is a great replenisher. So I would suggest laugh a lot, interact with people who make you feel good, exercising, watching your favorite series, eating your favorite food. All this will go a long way in help you beating stress. And acknowledging that there is stress itself helps you relieve it too. Yeah, there are times when I would feel, irritable or angry or whatever. So just sit down and try to understand what is it that is coming up for you in terms of feeling. Try to process it, try to go to the crux of it, and know that this is a stress that will last only a short time. Yeah? That is the belief that we all have to go with. And I would say practice mindfulness. Do not read too much on the crisis. It can dampen your spirits, and be human. Coping well would lead to increased motivation, increased productivity, more sense of well-being, and also job satisfaction in people. Post-crisis, post-COVID, this is something that we will be seeing in a few months from now. There has always been lingering effects of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, after every calamity. For example, if you've survived an air crash, you will never fly again, right? And after the Great Depression, people stopped investing, in financial institutions or putting their money in banks. So post COVID, I don't know, we might become more hygiene conscious, or we may become immune to this whole uncertainty itself and start living in the moment. But because this has never happened before, um, we really don't know, and it will be interesting to wait and see what's in store. And I, like the slide said, the resilient is the fittest. This is a script that I found interesting about uncertainty. Yes, we do not know what lies ahead. We can barely see what's coming. It could be a deep gorge or a rich forest. I really don't know what lies ahead, and signs are not clear. So what we really know is that we should keep going. We should join lights with one another and face uncertainty together. Before this, I'd like to just address this one thing. With your team members, it's important to know that the employees are stressed. There could be a lot of stressors at this time for them. It could be something like any change in the policy. Even a simple reallocation of team can up their stress. There could be worries about, am I going to get my pay? If I'm going to get, what percentage of it? Will I get a full pay? Will I get only 60% of it? So there is a lot of stress with your employees at this point of time. How you can help them cope with it is probably be transparent, address and acknowledge these fears. A little bit of self-disclosure also will help, in the sense to tell them that you too are as stressed, but also give them some sort of reassurance that things will be fine. And I cannot stress more on this. Be human and be empathetic. And I have put up a checklist here. So if you feel that any of your near and dear ones are going through this, are displaying these attitudes and actions, it is a good time for you to share some coping strategies with them. Or if you feel that it's too overwhelming for them, maybe even suggest that they go see a psychologist and help them abate this. Yeah, so that's 2 cents from me. Stay safe and be happy. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Varsha. I think that was a second summary of the things which we need to take care of. I'm sure this is a huge subject, and we'll never be able to complete this. We can't give justice to it in 20 minutes. But the idea was to just give a sense of things and be aware of that this is a problem area and we need to address this. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.